Well, welcome everyone. Hey, here we are in the on our third week of talking about tension. And before we get started on that, does anybody have anything that they would like to share, or a question, or a hot seat topic that they would like advice from the group on? Well, if not, then let's dive in on the assignment for this time, and also feel free to let me know how you felt about having an assignment. The assignment was to intentionally use tension this week, and then let us know how that went. I had an experience. It wasn't very interesting, but if anybody has something that they'd like to start off with, what did you do? And how did that work out for you?
So I had one. I'll start. It revolved around the iPad. My daughter and I stayed in town this weekend while her sister and my wife went up to the mountains for my daughter's ski lesson. My daughter was sick with a fever, and so I let her kind of, just have the run of the house, relax, read, and all that. But there was a point where I was like, decided it's time for the iPad to take a break. I gave her a warning, about a 10-minute warning, then a 5-minute, then a 1 minute. And then when I went in there, her reaction was, of course, over the top. I can't believe you're taking this. And I used my best P8 from the alt MBA, and I just sat there in stone silence for about 20 seconds. And it was uncomfortable for me, but I know it was uncomfortable for her, because she's probably used to me coming back and saying, because I said so, or I'm the dad, or that's the rule. And about 15, 20 seconds in, she just handed it over. And it resolved it. And I realized as a parent, I have authority, but I also don't have to use that authority in ways that are threatening, or I'm trying to think of a better word for that, but are threatening to my daughter. I can just leave it quiet and let her think through it. And I think that's what she needed, was the space to think about it. That was my tension. And I know this was an assignment. I did not intend to use that. I didn't force it in there. It just came up, and I was pretty excited to be able to actually use that today.
That is really cool. So what do you think that the tension, how was the tension, how did it affect your daughter? I mean, did you see an actual mechanism? Was it, I'm just tired of talking to you, or this isn't going anywhere, or this isn't how I expected this to go? What was your daughter thinking?
I think to borrow from Stephen Covey, I gave her some space between stimulus and response, which she might not normally get, whether it's because my wife and I are both there, because she has a twin sister who, when one of them's hearing it from us, the other one loves to parent with us, if you know what that means. Let me jump in on my sister here. Now it's 3 against 1. I think the fact that we were alone helped, and it gave her time to think. It also probably gave her time to say, this isn't so bad. I have 8 million toys in the basement, or I have a book I can read. There's other things I can do. It gave her a chance to work through those options where normally she would just hold on, like a dog with a toy, right? I'm going to hold on and play tug of war with you. So I think I want to give her credit for thinking through it.
That's great. Thanks, Brett. Rocky, did you have something you wanted to add? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. Okay.
Brett, do you give her like the reason? Because I have similar battles, and I explain the reason of why she needs to not be on it. And that sometimes helps with, the reasoning, and having them understand that I'm not just asserting my authority or being a dad that wants them to do what I want to do, but, giving them a reason for doing this, because that's, what you need to do, how you do it, how you get it done. And I fight the battle of folding clothes often, and I've turned to, well, that's what a dresser's for, and that's what I do. That's what your mother does. And that seemed to kind of like give them I don't say the wiggle room, but understand that it's time to, I don't say do the right thing. And the tension is more of, okay, I need to more act like the way I should be acting or do things that I should be doing. So it seems to work 80% of the time.
Yeah, I see they are very clear on why we set limits, whether it's for their personal health or whether it's because they have other things they need to do or other priorities. And we have limits set, where the iPad will turn off, basically. They can't get to anything. But we have been clear about that. But it's also why I give her that 10-minute, 5-minute, 1-minute countdown. Because usually what happens if we come in and say, turn it off, like, oh, I just have 2 more minutes to finish this, or let me finish this game or whatever it is. And I don't want to be arbitrary about it, for sure. But we've also made it clear that the goal is for them to give it up gently when the time comes. And that means no fighting, nothing else. Be grateful for the privilege of having this and being able to use it when you did. Again, that's our goal. I didn't say we always achieve that.
That's great. Anybody else have an experience with tension this week?
I didn't even spot an opportunity to raise tension. And what I believe is that probably because I'm avoiding this whole tension thing, and I'm trying to go back 2 days, in the past, and it must be that I had some opportunity that I missed, but it's probably due to my resistance to try this tension thing at all, because I'm really bad at this. I admire Brett that he sustained for 20 seconds, because for me it would be, give me that iPad right now, immediately. And of course that everyone needs some time to react, to choose a reaction, and different personalities need different time. To me, it's very easy to make a decision or to start doing something or stop doing something. But I noticed that, let's say, my husband, he needs more time. He simply needs more time to think, to decide, to, absorb things from the outside world. I've heard about 3 different types of personality: visual one, the acoustic one, and the kinesthetic one, the one who needs to touch things, who needs more time to process things. Even those persons are very intelligent, they need more time, simply. So our kids could be totally different type than us, and this is also plays a role in raising tension. But definitely I missed to fulfill assignment, and I wonder, is it really that I have such a strong resistance to even notice an opportunity?
Does anybody else have did anybody else feel resistance to doing this?
Yeah, Quinn, I too have it's difficult for me. I'm getting better at it. I went back and read the prompt from Alt MBA that addressed this very issue. I think it was prompt 8. And it's very interesting how Seth broke that prompt up into 2 parts. It was dealing with tension, but the first part dealt strictly with gratitude. And the second part dealt with tension. And I think what he was trying to say was, putting gratitude first helps to lessen the impact of tension on the person receiving it, which was interesting because I really didn't understand it until I went back and read the prompt. I can send it to you. But it was interesting because he had us do, something on gratitude, how we express gratitude to somebody. And then the first part of the prompt was also, for the rest of Alt MBA, show gratitude 3 times a day to people, actually either publicly or privately. And then the second part was, where have you used tension? And I think the thing he was, again, trying to get across was, if you start with gratitude, in other words, for instance, if you want to impose tension, well, I really appreciate that you're trying to do so forth and so on, or, I know you really like what you're doing. Maybe in the case of a phone or something like that, playing with the phone, playing with the device. But now it's time to, and then the tension, where you stop then. And I think perhaps, what do you guys think of that? A combination of gratitude first and then imposing the tension, just a little bit of gratitude.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it signals it signals a generous intent.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what he was trying to say, instead of, making it come across as being really negative. When you start with that appreciation of the person for what they're doing, I understand how important this is for you or whatever, and then, but we have to put it up, or whatever you're doing,
Yeah. So here's the question then.
Yeah.
Does the gratitude signal generous intent to you or to the person who you are about to tense, or both, I guess?
I think it's to the person. I think it was to the person, to take some of the edge off the tension you're about to impose. But it's very smooth.
Well, do we want to take the edge off the tension, or do we just want to let them know that we're doing this out of love and generosity?
Is that part of it? Is that part of the gratitude?
Yeah.
Part of the love and generosity.
I also remember, since I've done my Alt MBA in May this year, I remember very well these 2 parts of the prompt. And it's true that we had first, I think, 2 days or something to practice gratitude, and then to start raising tension. But I didn't necessarily connect this with the same time, doing both almost at the same time. I understood it as we had to practice gratitude in order to be sure that when we are raising tension, imposing to someone or to some situation, it is beneficial for both, for us and for the person for whom we are raising this tension, for the best, let's say, outcome of the situation for both persons, or even more than 2. This is how I understood it. Maybe it's really different, but I don't think that we should, I don't know, diminish tension with some appreciation intro, or in this, I wouldn't start, if I would start in tension, I wouldn't start with, I know that you are doing this for the best reason, or how much you love something. I don't think that this kind of slow introduction is needed for tension. But of course, it depends on situation. Yeah, this is how I understood this between gratitude and tension. But I will go back to this prompt also, John. Thank you for reminding me.
I think I've always shied away from the sir sandwich, or the gratitude sandwich, or whatever you want to call it. The, hey, you did a great job, here's where you're screwing up, by the way, you're doing a great job. That a lot of times will ring hollow. So I love the gratitude aspect of this, but I think it's more like bodybuilding or running. You don't do it the first day and expect results. The gratitude is something you build up over time, that gratitude muscle. So I should, in this case, if I've done this properly, I've been showing my daughter gratitude, my gratitude for her, modeling that for her, so she can, have gratitude for the things in her life. So then when it does come down to embrace the tension, we're all in a position where that tension sits where it needs to be. Not, I'm trying to get something from you, you're trying not to give it to me. It's more of, hey, I trust Dad. I trust that he's doing what's best for me. I am able to handle this situation with grace, gratitude, or an awareness of why it's important. And so I like the idea of gratitude. I think it's something, the good finding and the gratitude has to happen regularly for this to be effective.
Yeah, that's kind of what created the tension is, I mean, because all you were doing was giving space between stimulus and response. The tension had to exist already in the stimulus is this, and my response is not where I've been trained to go. I think. Does that sound right?
I think so. And not to beat the dead horse of executive functioning, which has been coming up a lot. Our daughters at 9, almost 10, are still just on the cusp of understanding a schedule and what's coming before them and planning out ahead of, you know, today. And so I think a lot of that plays into this. If I create too much tension, they can only see their own little world. They can't see anything around them. And so I think right now we're building their ability to deal with tension as well, especially if your kids are high strung, and I have a couple.
Well, I thought about this prompt from time to time, but I never really like said, oh, here's an opportunity for intention, for creating tension. But I think because I was watching for it, it happened. And it certainly allowed me to see it as soon as it happened. So that was interesting. So I just have a really short little one. I went up yesterday to do my annual planning retreat, and I do that at the University of Utah. And I came home to find that my son had received this swag box from the University of Utah Business School because they want him to be an undergrad there next year. And he looked at me, and he looked at this big bag of stuff, and he said, this seems weird that they would send me all of this stuff. And I had just been up there and was reminded again about how undergraduates are not what the University of Utah is for. And I said that to him. I said, you know, I was just up there and I was reminded that the University of Utah isn't very good at undergraduate. And then I just let that sit. Because what I've found is anytime I suggest to him that maybe he should not go there, he gets really, I'm going to go there. So I'm resisting all temptation to tell him where he should go to school. And that worked because I just let it sit there like Brett did. And after about 10, 12 seconds, he said, what do you mean by that? And then I was able to give him well, this is what I observed and this is what I've seen. And and as soon as I said it, I was like, oh, that was tension. Good, I have something to report.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
It was almost at the edge to come today
Yes,
without any.
I'm just laughing. That's all.
Oh, okay.
We're going through college too, and it's funny.
It's tough because we all have sat and watched. We've all seen Seth's rant about education and about colleges, and I feel like now I know something and I'm totally powerless to do anything with it because it will elicit a rebellion response if I start telling my son, you know, you've got a full scholarship down here at this place that actually likes undergrads. Why would you want to go and pay a lot of money for a place that really is into research and other stuff?
So does he feel the pain of the money? Does he realize that if he doesn't take that money, he'll have to shell out his own money?
Yeah, no, he doesn't.
Or is it your money?
Well, we don't have any money, and he's aware of that. But I haven't made it clear yet that, you know, if you don't take the full scholarship, you're going to be, we've got like $8,000 in his college savings account, which isn't going to get him anywhere. So you will have to live at home. And I'm just now starting to piece together this tension, how to create the tension of, look, if you don't go to the place that's going to pay you to go there, you're not going to enjoy it very much, and you're going to be in debt for a long time for a thing that isn't worth all that much.
So one thing that has surprised me with kids, especially boys, they cannot connect dots. You literally have to connect the dots for them beyond what you would even comprehend as normal. Like when I would teach soccer, I would move them to the position on the field. Like this, go here, do this, when, like literally we would just practice the actual movement. And when the kids were little, I would take a ball and a bat and I go, when you hear this sound, run. And so we would just practice. They can't connect dots. So you have to be overtly simple and clear. You can go to that school, but they're not giving you any money, and you will have to sign these loans, which, by the way, you have no money, so you won't actually be able to get loans, and I'm not signing for them.
Rocky, I guess the product of how kids are being raised today, and specifically boys, is that a byproduct, not connecting dots, or coming up to the high school years, going into what are you going to do next? Is that a byproduct of the education? And we're in the midst of a master plan for our school district, and I sit on the committee, and I actually sit on the data committee, and we just got the results back from the survey of some 2,000 students and community members, and there's a general theme in the survey that school's not teaching us how to live after life, or how to live life after school, and is that parents' responsibility? Is that the school responsibility? Is it a combination thereof? And it's more of a kind of a rhetorical question, but the shift in how we parent and the shift in how the schools educate is, I think, what we're feeling. I don't feel it yet, but I'm trying to change the tide.
So the school that we went to had a very simple saying that was part of their marketing. You are the parent. We are here to help you, but it's your job to raise your kids. We're here to stand and help you. As far as what's happened societally, now that I think about it, when I went to high school, we were taught home ec, right? You learned how to do those things. I don't know that kids still are, but if you graduated high school and you didn't go to college, people said, go get a job. And that's what kids did. And college wasn't expensive. My college was cheap. Like I could work delivering pizzas and pay for college. So it was the magnitude of the decision wasn't like it is today. And I don't think anyone's having honest conversations with kids. I mean, when we were kids and you did something wrong, the neighbor would say something and tell the next neighbor who'd say something, who'd tell your parents who'd say something. So you'd have 7 adults yelling at you for being dumb. Now it's like, don't you dare tell my kid he's dumb.
John, go ahead.
Don't get me started. I mean, when my son came home from school, it was just continuation once he came home. It wasn't homework, but it was a continuation of just conversation and discussion of things, whether it be current events or historical events or just interesting conversation. And now I think a lot of what I'm seeing, I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. It's beyond me to even imagine the challenges parents have today. Raising kids just immersed, not just a little bit, but now immersed in everything's devices. Everything's a device. When you're not in school, you know, you're on an iPhone. If you're not on an iPhone, you're on an iPad. If you're not on an iPad, you're texting with your friend. You know, when I was raising my son, that stuff was just coming into play. So it was pretty tough, but I don't think there was anything like the challenges today. I remember even Seth saying somewhere along the line that, you know, when his sons came home, you know, it sort of continued at home. Discussions and all that kind of thing. Watching interesting lectures, like I became an absolute documentary freak, but really good documentaries. And now, since I've been following Seth and so forth, I'm really into documentaries that are about linchpins. I mean, people, not just historically well-known figures, but people that maybe not should be known figures, but maybe somewhere got lost along the line. Somebody has discovered and actually made a documentary about this individual. And it's pretty amazing, you know, so that kind of thing, I was even thinking in the media-centric situation we're in now, how parents could actually help their kids engage, continue their education, but engage in a positive manner by using things like really good, not crap documentaries, but really, really good documentaries. Okay, whether historical, current events, TED Talks, name it. And then engage in an eye-to-eye, eye contact conversation with your kids. What do you think? What about this point? What about that point? Listen to Brene Brown on a TED Talk and discuss it, how it applies, you know? Or Bernadette Jiwa, one of the greatest storytellers living today. How you know, what about that? You know, just discussions, and they'll probably start forgetting about the devices once you start these interesting discussions. But I think it does have to be an engaging, interesting discussion. That's something that's interesting, of interest to them.
Well, what I heard from Bob and then Rocky and John suggests maybe a thesis. Let me bounce this off of you. That comes back to our topic for today of tension. It seems like a lot of our modern life, especially in the last 15 years, has been very good at alleviating all forms of tension. So we all have a device. Nobody has to be bored anymore. Boredom is tension because we can instantly solve our boredom problem. It used to be that, you know, if you were in the car on a road trip or something, it was tension because there was only one radio station that you could listen to, and everybody had to either talk or read a book, or then they would throw up because they can't read a book while they're driving. Anyway, there was lots of tension in the world, and I think we might have lost some of that, and our kids are certainly going to have a lower threshold of tension. So what does that suggest for us, if anything? Or what do you think? Is that not an accurate assessment?
I believe it's very accurate because we really miss tension. Even us who grow up sitting in the car with tension, traveling, myself, I lost the ability to raise it, or maybe this is the reason why I do not like tension. I'm not really sure what's chicken and what's the egg, but in any case, I believe that you are right. Phones are really taking our time and our boredom, and so the possibility to feel this tension and to think what is the best next thing we should do, because we are not thinking enough anymore, and kids even less. So it is due to education system that they cannot connect dots, but it's also because they are not practicing connecting dots. They have phones, they have iPads, and no reason to think about different ways to connect dots. They simply do not practice this at all.
Yeah, exactly. And also when you have a device, no matter what device, your answers are instantly there. If I say Bernadette Jiwa and you know nothing about Bernadette Jiwa, type her into Google. You don't have to engage with anybody to ask somebody, who is Bernadette Jiwa? You know, what's her contribution? What has she done for other people?
Yeah, but it goes beyond even the devices. So Rocky and Bob both talked about how we need to have this conversation with our children about the implications of going to school. This is crazy. I was I was doing a financial counseling peer group, and we had a set of young married, they'd been married for like 2 years. They had a combined $70,000 of student debt. And so we're talking about how do you get a mortgage? And they're like, we already have one. But they slipped into that with no tension whatsoever. It was totally friction-free for them to amass that amount of money. And so our society has taken away even the tension of signing loan papers. You go down to the student aid office, I guess, and they give you money.
Well, so they don't explain it properly. They basically say, here's your award package. You're getting $30,000. Cool. Sign here, sign here, sign here. An auto loan or a home mortgage is required to say to you, here are your payments, here's your interest rate, here's the total amount you have to pay back. Colleges don't. They don't even mention it. They're like, here's your award package. It's like they've removed the tension, because if there was tension there, everyone would walk out of their office.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's atrocious. And they tell stories. And because my daughter went through this, they're like, well, our average student only carries $5,000 of debt a year. She said, well, here's the math. You're giving me this, the college is this, you say it's 5,000, where's this gap of 15,000 you seem to have forgotten about? Well, they go, well, some students work. Well, how much do they make? 5. Where's this $10,000 gap? I don't think they were used to people calling them out.
Yeah. Go ahead, Maria.
And don't forget that kids at that age are young. They cannot imagine what a loan can cause to them later on. And they are taking this big decision at still very early age. This is something really what is almost illegal.
So can we just come back for a minute? I'd like to ask just to spend a few minutes on Maria's point about, are we afraid of tension? And if so, are we afraid of tension because tension doesn't exist in our world as much as it used to, or is there something else? I'm not sure that it's that important, but how do we as parents overcome our reluctance to impose tension if we have it?
Okay, for myself, I know that I am afraid of attention because I'm afraid of the results. That I can fail in the goal I would like to see as a result of raising tension. That's for sure. This is the reason why I do not sit quietly with tension. I prefer to push, I don't know, to be, to use my parent authority, let's say for my daughter, instead of giving her space, if I need to, or I prefer to accept the part of responsibilities to myself in order to avoid tension or a conflict that this result can cause. And it's quite similar at work also. I am not very comfortable with, let's say, stating something and then quietly waiting for the result from the other side, which is not good because sometimes part of my work is also sales. This is not very, let's say, this is not the strength of a salesperson.
So any advice on overcoming fear of tension? How can we build a tension muscle? Or Rocky, did you have something else you want?
I had a thought. To me, tension usually means uncertainty and fear. The uncertainty is my kid going to gladly accept what I'm asking them to do, or are they going to blow up in my face and I'm going to have a full-fledged nuclear meltdown? And the fear comes in when you say, I'm not willing to deal with that meltdown, so I'm going to compromise what I think is the right thing to do. And I think one of the problems with tension is we don't always feel up to it. We don't feel ready to sit with it and allow it, to allow that decision to have an undesirable outcome. And as we all know, you can make a great decision and still have a crappy outcome. That's life. You don't always control the answers. And I think for me, that's where I've been trying to level up over the last year or so, is do what you want to do. Because I used to think this reflects on me. Wow, where did I fail as a parent that we got to the point where my kid will do that? Well, guess what? That kid's an individual. And yeah, there's a lot of nurture in there, but there's a lot of nature inside that I don't have control over or any influence on, if at all.
You have to let go of their success, which is difficult to do. I know my neighbor has struggled with his 3 kids, and he and his wife finally just said, we are done. We're out. And since that happened, the kids have stepped up.
100%.
Not perfect, but moving in a much better direction now that they just let go of the tension. Go, you want to screw up your life? Go ahead. We're not covering you.
Or not building our identity on your success or failure. I mean, Covey in his 7 Habits book talks about his example of his kids. Once they stopped identifying with their kids' success, their kids got a lot more successful.
Yeah, that's right on, Rocky. That's what it is. You know, I think that's probably was one of the hardest things for me as a parent, and I found myself falling back on it time and time again, single parent. And, you know, finally I just had to say, you know, I've done what I can, and it's up to you now. And he did quite well with it. He fell a lot. He failed a lot and he fell a lot, but he came around. It's tough.
But it's normal. We all failed a lot. This is the way how people grow.
It is hard not to be enmeshed as a parent. It is hard to stand by and watch that, but I agree with Rocky. It's the right thing to do. Just as my kids are 9 and 10, this is the first time I've ever parented 9 or 10-year-olds. So every time they hit a new milestone, I'm like, wow, this is brand new. And that's one way I diffuse the tension with my kids is I say, look, I've never parented a 9-year-old before. This is all new to me. Can you help me out? And try to ask them to take some ownership for what we're doing.
And that creates tension for them too, because that puts the burden partly back on them. That's interesting.
I try to show failure. I think I've said this before, and you know, tell the girls, you know, I screwed up, especially if, you know, things elevate and I, you know, all of a sudden yell or, you know, get frustrated with something. And same goes with when they fail. You know, it's the toughest thing. You hate to see them fail, but failure is the best thing for them. And try not to fix their problem. And my wife and I struggle with that because she wants to, you know, make sure and, you know, literally doing their homework. And I'm, on the other hand, you know, I let them struggle with their homework to a point where, you know, they will figure it out or they won't figure it out. And if they don't, then, you know, they'll go in with half done homework or it's wrong. But I think letting failure happen, and that's part of what what is the toughest thing in parenting is watching failure. But you know, my father used to say the same thing: is, you know, do your best, and you know, there's always a little better you can do. So it's tough, but it's part of the parenting mix. And you know, I don't mind creating the tension and having it there. And that's, again, you know, my wife, you know, she hates tension, and you know, the minute there's tension, you know, she's trying to alleviate it. And that's, you know, where, you know, the girls tend to go to her when there's a problem, because they know if they come to me, you know, I'm not going to solve their problem. So, you know, it's more of it's a parenting issue we have, but we're working on that too. But I agree, Rocky, you gotta let kids fail. For sure.
Yeah.
My wife just this week, my 6-year-old wanted ice cream in a cone, you know, from the freezer. And I said, like, oh, okay, go ahead, do it yourself. And my wife's like, no, she can't do that. You know, I'm thinking like, well, if she really wants ice cream, she'll probably be motivated to do it, you know? So she was fine with that. But now I just realized, like, now they both realize they can access it themselves, really. Except the cones are up high in the cabinet. So that'll be a new challenge.
What I believe is that this, if we just a second, Quinn, if we do not let them a time to figure out things, we are not letting them how to practice connecting dots. This is the same thing. Figuring out something and connecting dots are the same part of the, is the same type of practice. This is why kids are not connecting dots very well. Sorry.
No, thank you. I think you're absolutely right. We talked 2 weeks ago about how, or maybe last time, about how tension is the difference between I want and I don't have. And so it occurs to me when Maria's talking that a lot of our tension problems can take care of themselves if we just let our kids want stuff and then don't get it for them. And we don't have to even create the tension, they can create it themselves. Well, this has been really interesting. I'm feeling like the energy around tension, this topic has just subsided somewhat. I'm going to keep watching for it, because watching for it has been interesting this week. I encourage you all to do the same. Brett, Maria, Catherine, and I have kind of been trying to do a little bit of a steering around this group. And one of the things that they suggested this is that we come up with a calendar of topics so that we can plan it in advance. And so we're going to do that. If you have any topics that you'd particularly like to have included on that, please shoot me a DM or post it under this topic, and we'll get that included. Maria, you had an idea. I think, was it you who wanted to talk about an alternate time?
Sorry?
Was it you or Catherine that wanted to talk about an alternate time?
I think Catherine. I don't think.
Okay.
You mean that the extra time for the book, or what?
No, this is like
No.
to have a separate session of this for people who can't get here at this hour.
Ah, okay. So I didn't understood. Okay. That was Catherine. She mentioned, let's say, an hour later than our regular meeting. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll let Catherine take that on. John has taken on the idea that we floated last week about doing a book. John, do you have anything you want to say about that? You're muted, John.
Yeah, I was sending everybody a notification. I think everybody got it about the little prompt I made up. If you haven't seen that, if you just want to give me some feedback on that, it's just an idea for putting together a book of stories, just personal stories. I was also thinking different iterations, that there's different ways to go about this. Even easier, I believe, would perhaps be a book of a collection of tips And that might be even easier on everybody as tips come to you. Just, write it down and you can send it to that prompt or attach it to that prompt. So that might be a better way to go. And the parenting book could be 101 tips, 101 parenting tips. By the way, I woke up at 1 o'clock this morning with an epiphany concerning the type thing. And maybe an idea would be to consider 27 specific points as far as parts of a ruckus making or linchpin type parent slant kid. 27 being based on our alphabet, A through Z. And maybe the book could be A for accounting, and then a little, what is accounting? And then tips based on accounting. B is for be on time. And again, all the way down. Now it might be getting interesting once we get to X, but that might be something to think about too.
Okay.
The ABCs of parenting with 101 tips or 1,001 tips, whatever we want.
All right. So I like both of those ideas. I think there's a lot of potential. There are people who don't have the opportunity to be with us on these calls just because of whatever, who know stuff about Akimbo principles and can offer us a lot of value. And I think if we can engage them some way in what's your, how do you raise a ruckus maker? That would be a very interesting thing. So if you have ideas about that, please shoot them over to John, and John, you can organize that and ask us for help.
Sure.
And we can participate as you all feel like doing. Again, thank you for this. If you have ideas for next week, let me know. Brett and Maria, we talked about meeting together after this, but I think Maria, you can't. So let's plan on Friday. Would that work?
Yeah, Friday is fine. Yeah, okay.
All right. Well, great. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful Wednesday. And
You too.
Talk to you
Take care,
later.
everybody. Have a good day.